Hi everyone, welcome back to The Learning Gardener. My name is Pip if you haven't been here before, and welcome to my raised garden bed. Something that's been really lovely about creating this garden is seeing the local wildlife come into the garden every single day. We've had so many little birds and finches and like the native bees. I know I keep going on about the native bees, but I've just never seen these bees before. I never even heard of them, and they're so beautiful, and some of them are massive, but it's really lovely to see them come into the garden. Something that's come into the garden that's been a little less lovely is the wasps, and we've had a ton of them lately. My neighbors have had nests. I've had 6 nests. Like, it's just, they're a bit out of control. And they're into this spot, and I'm a bit scared that when we deal with this spot I'm going to get bitten by a wasp, which I really don't want because ow, and also I'm allergic to bees, so I'll probably get some sort of reaction to a wasp. We have got cranky puppies because they haven't been walked yet this morning, because we're trying to deal with this issue early because we are in for another scorcher, and it is currently not too offensive to be outside. I was hoping that we were going to get out here early enough to do the second part of this video, but I think it's not going to happen. We'll do that this evening. So what we're going to do is get in and remove a broccoli and a kale from this bed. Both, in theory, shouldn't even be in the garden still, but they were looking so healthy. They were still putting on broccoli, and I was like, let's just leave it. What's the worst that could happen? And I thought, yeah, I'll get some broccoli seed and it'll be great because it'll be from a broccoli plant that's tolerated our conditions really well. But no, it's just covered in aphids. Absolutely covered, and I've been meaning to deal with it for weeks and just haven't, because there's always a wasp hovering around here, and apparently wasps eat aphids, which is great, but also, like, I'm not into wasps. I don't want the wasps, so I want this broccoli gone. I want the kale gone. We do have a very full garbage bin, so they're going to have to go into garbage bags and just wait for garbage pickup in a couple of days out the front, and the wasps can go out the front and away from us. But yeah, we need to get in here and deal with this immediately. The second thing we're going to be doing is I have been harvesting Pyrethrum Daisies, which I grow in this garden because I planted numerous plants, pyrethrum, lavender, rosemary, tansy, which are all tick deterrents apparently, because this area has a lot of ticks, like a lot of ticks. My best friend has lived down the road here for 15, nearly 20 years, so she knows a lot about this local area and how common the little birds are, how common the crazy, amazing bees are, but she also knows how difficult the ticks in this area are. We have already dealt with a few on Clancy this year. Thankfully, so far we haven't had many, and I think that's because when I moved in we took out the 2 trees and it opened the backyard up a lot. But yeah, I planted these plants to try and prevent ticks, and my thinking was that if I can plant these plants in and around the garden beds, then when the puppies run through the garden beds, which they do all the time, it will help keep ticks off them. So far, thankfully, we have been tick-free. I also planted things like lemongrass and marigolds that apparently keep snakes away, and since I've done that, I haven't had any more arguments with black snakes in the backyard, thank God, as well, please. Long may it stay that way. But now we're fighting with wasps. So the pyrethrum flowers, you can grind them up and turn them into either a spray or a powder. I don't want to upset the bees because pyrethrum can kill bees, from my understanding. I don't know if that's because of the chemicals they put in the commercial ones, or if the actual daisy version does the same. But I'm going to create a powder and sprinkle it all over this garden bed once I've removed the kale and the broccoli, because I want to try and kill some of the aphids, and aphids do tend to live on the surface of the dirt. It would be ideal if I do this now, so it'll depend on if I see any pollinators around, but we need to get to this quickly if we're going to have a chance of doing it this morning. If I do it this evening, there's a chance that the aphids will have escaped and not got pyrethrumed. Let's get to it. I did sacrifice a cherry tomato branch which had some little tomatoes on it, but it had aphids crawling all the way across it just because the broccoli had grown so big and flopped over in our wind that they were starting to march on over. So in terms of managing that on the tomatoes, I'm obviously going to be keeping a very close eye on them. But I think when I water later, I'll turn the hose on full blast and just squirt all the aphids directly in the face, ideally, because aphids will die if you do that, if you get a direct hit. It's not the world's best method because sometimes they just get blasted off the leaf. The other thing that I sometimes do that I might do on the tomatoes that I wouldn't do today because it is going to be a scorcher is warm soapy water and spray the aphids. Will break down kind of like the outer shell of the aphids and kills them, and does so very effectively. But you've obviously got to get it on the aphids. But dealing with such a massive infestation, I do think that I'm going to pop the pyrethrum powder on this morning, because most of the bees are actually over there busily working on the pumpkins, thankfully. But there doesn't appear to be any real bees around here, mostly because the only flower that's here is the dahlia. So I'm just going to do that now. I've got my dried Pyrethrum Daisies here in the kitchen, and this is something I've wanted to try for a really long time, but I've never done it before, so I don't know if it's going to work, but I've got my fingers crossed because this is a nice natural solution. And ideally, if I can, I'd rather use this method than using soap and warm water. Not because soap and warm water is ineffective, but because you never really know what's in commercial soap, and I would like to move towards being as organic as possible. At the moment, I don't say I'm organic just simply because I use commercial fertilizers, but one day, once I've built my soil up enough, I'm hoping that I won't need to do that and I can rely just on compost. From these Pyrethrum Daisies, I can make a pyrethrum spray or a powder. And the bonus of making a spray compared to using a commercial spray is that because this is a perennial daisy, you can do it year after year. And it does mean that it's organic and that you remove products like copper sulfate from the store-bought ones. The only thing is that you generally have to use the homemade version fairly quickly within making it, because it does degrade and lose its strength within a couple of days. Ideally, once these daisies were dried, I should have stored them in an airtight container in a cool, dark place. That hasn't happened, just sat in the corner of my dining room. So we'll just see how these flowers from a non-ideal situation go, but hopefully they'll kill off all of our pesky aphids, and hopefully they'll have retained some of their insecticidal toxicity. The whole head dried flower can actually apparently do that for up to 6 months after they're dried, but it's the once you prepare it factor, once you break the flower down, that's when their strength starts to degrade. To make the pyrethrum spray, you need half a cup of pyrethrum flower powder, 10 mils of liquid soap, and 1 litre of water. There is also an option for doing freshly picked flower heads with isopropyl alcohol, but I don't have any of that, so I won't be looking at doing that. To make the pyrethrum powder, all I have to do is hand grind this into as much of a dust as I can, and then sprinkle it where it's needed. So it will be interesting to see if this achieves anything, or if we continue to have an aphid problem and a wasp problem in this area. But I have other options if this doesn't work. I just really want to see if this is an option for pest control going forward, because it's nice and easy. I did end up putting the powder in a NutriBullet blender just because I could see that hand grinding it was not only going to take forever, but all I was doing was releasing seeds. I hope you guys have enjoyed trying something new with us in the garden. Hopefully it works, but if it doesn't, it's all been a learning experience, and worst case scenario, all that will happen is that I'll have aphids and perhaps a whole mass of Pyrethrum Daisies just here, which is totally fine with me. What I'm going to do right now is just grab some of these ripe cherry tomatoes and take them inside before the birds get them, and try and retreat from the sauna that is this outdoor weather. So thank you again for hanging out with us. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video, and hopefully we will see you in the next video. Well, I was not expecting this to become a mini harvest video. I also wasn't expecting the wasp that came out of the beans when I was picking them, so I'm going to retreat indoors before I push my luck too far. I might grab a few of the ripe strawberries that I can see before I go, but this has been a nice surprise harvest.